I think we're all ready to go. Thanks everybody for coming out. Welcome to Vancouver. So this is where I'm based out of. So I see a lot of new faces, some familiar faces. So nice to see everybody out. So we're going to talk about some Drupal 8 DIY theming. And the whole inspiration for this talk kind of comes from how themers can kind of get up and going a lot quicker with Drupal 8 without waiting so much for the contrib space, which we had to do a lot in D7. So you're going to kind of see that theme throughout as we continue the talk. But the meat and potatoes of the how-to here, I'm going to walk you guys through how you can create a slideshow or content tabs, which is kind of like more familiar term is probably quick tabs that let you toggle between tabbed content. So, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but we actually have a Slack channel for the conference. You can request access to the channel through the Heroku app. And then once you download either an app on your iPhone or on your computer, you can join the session. And then on the website, we have links everywhere to the Slack sessions. So basically, this session has its own Slack channel that, as we're going through this, I'm going to watch it. So if you have questions, you can pop it in there or do it the old-fashioned way and just throw your hand up, and happy to answer that as well. But all the info is on the website as well if you guys want to join later if you're, don't want to rush this right now. And I think that session will stay open, that Slack channel will stay open after, so if you have any post-talk questions that you want to pop into the channel, just tag me and I'm happy to provide answers or feedback there. So into the intros. My name is Leah, like I said, based here in Vancouver at the Jive, and I am a front-end developer there. Mainly working with Drupal, but definitely cross over into other platforms as well on the front end anyway. I'm a co-maintainer of the Basic starter theme. So Basic is kind of a bare bones toolkit that lets you get started with theming really quickly, that doesn't have any design opinions, I guess. So, you walk into that theme with a customized design and you kind of have the tools to make it work without fighting against any pre-existing styles. And we've had version 1 of the 8 branch out for almost over a year now, and we're going to start up a 2x branch as well. So if anybody's interested and has feedback as to what they look for in starter themes, we have a roadmap issue in the queue. So just pop in there and let us know what you think. I also helped with the planning of this summit this year. So if anybody has any feedback, let me know on that, and I'll make sure it gets to the right people and for next year and the years after. And in general, I just love clean markup, componentizing design, modular code, wit beer, red wine, running, and rock and roll. But my current pregnant state has made this list a little less fun. Back to ice cream, pickles, and prenatal yoga. By prenatal yoga, I mean putting my shoes on. So that's it for me. Thank God. So as we dive into this talk, I always like to take things like this from a perspective of challenges I encountered during project work, because it is where I find the majority of my learning comes from. when we tinker around on our own, we don't always face the same challenges as when we're trying to address client needs. So this presentation is, I'm going to kind of present the context first, as how we came to this decision and what made us start this conversation internally, basically. So the client that this work was done for is called Scans. So they came to us in early 2006, and they had just completed their Kickstarter funding, quite impressively. So that was nice. We already knew Drupal was going to be the technology for this site. They had an existing static site, but they definitely felt like their hands were tied a bit because they had some technical know-how, but not necessarily, from the responsive side of things. Or they definitely relied on us for that, and also for design expertise as well. So we knew Drupal was the technology number one because they wanted more flexibility to edit and manage and add content. So in early 2016, Drupal 8 was only a few months old. I believe it was November or December that it got out of beta. So we had a decision to make. So after the wireframing and design phase, we had to assess if it was going to be D7 or D8. And given the row-based design, we decided to go with the paragraphs module to give them that flexibility to move content up and down. And this really didn't give us any strong indication in either way because the D7 and the D8 module were both available. But we did know that based on the design, we had some slideshow functionality and some content tab functionality that had zero support for in the contrib space. In the context of working with the paragraphs module, maybe there was some preliminary work otherwise. So we had to make a decision as to where we would go from there, and thus the title of the presentation. You could probably guess where we landed. Drupal 8. So why weren't we concerned about the lack of contrib support? And that was because of theme libraries. So this is a new concept, very new to Drupal 8. We're going to dive into that. I'm going to kind of go pretty quickly in terms of the intro to what a library is, because I really want to get you to the cool stuff, which is, how we made the slideshow and how we made the content tabs possible. But I have included some links and stuff at the end, so if you're unsure about content libraries, you can definitely have some reference material there. So what are theme libraries? They are conceptually similar to what we saw in Drupal 7 with the libraries module that kind of let us bring in external libraries, store them in a nice little package, and that would let modules use them elsewhere. So probably the widest, most used example would be Views Slideshow, where you would download jQuery's slider, input it in your libraries folder, and that package of JavaScript that powered the slideshow was compartmentalized, and it was only loaded as needed. But this was also obviously done through the contrib space, not through the theme layer. So what Drupal 8 theme libraries let us do is take that same logic and apply it to bring it into the theme layer. So no relying on the contrib space. So this means that at the theme layer, you can have little pockets of JavaScript and CSS that can be dynamically loaded. And we'll get into how those are dynamically loaded. So, but why the heck would we want to do this? And outside of the hints I've already thrown down is that we weren't, contrib wasn't quite ready. but there was some confusion when this concept was initially proposed on Drupal.org for D8, because if you have some CSS, who wants to think about when and why you want to load it? It's just not the way as themers we're used to doing it. You just put it all in one file, and maybe you have it nicely into Sass partial files, but you don't, as a front-end themer, you don't want to have to be thinking about what components on what page. And this is exactly what I thought. So this is my comment in this issue, stating I don't understand. Basically, I have no idea why this is helpful. And maybe some people will find it useful, but my concern was, is this yet another layer of complexity added as a Drupal themer that somebody that just writes front-end code is going to have to overcome to actually even just get started with Drupal? But today I can definitely tell you that I love theme libraries. So stay with me. I'm hoping I can convince you as we go through this. Okay. So, oops. So, I'm going to get into the theme libraries 101, basically. So when we have our theme info file in Drupal 8, we have it now in the YAML format, so not the PHP format that we're used to seeing in Drupal 7. And just so you guys know, whenever I've capitalized theme, in all uppercase letters, that's kind of where you insert your theme name. So if you're copying code later, just make sure you're updating that name. So this info file is well, first of all, it's kind of pared it down for the purposes of the slide, but we're definitely seeing a lot less in this file than we were seeing in a traditional Drupal 7 info file. And the first thing you notice is that there's 0 CSS and JS declared there. But what you do see is a reference to a library, and we've called this global here. And that namespace is completely in your control, just so you know. You can name it Fuzzy Kittens, and everything would still work as long as all your namespace is consistent. So what we have to do here now is have a themed libraries YAML file for Drupal 8. So this is where the added complexity comes in for Drupal 8. So now not only does a themer need to create their info file, they need to create a corresponding libraries file. And that's where all of your CSS is being pulled in, and your JS in this sense. So because this global library was defined in our info file, it will be loaded on every single page of our Drupal site, much like defining CSS in our Drupal 7 info file would do the same. But what we're going to do here is a precursor to what we're going to talk about later. Is we're going to add a second theme library here, and this is the Slick theme library. So Slick is a Slideshow JavaScript library that, like jQuery Cycle or BX Slider or Flex Slider, but this one's my favorite. So here we have defined the CSS and the JS that is needed for that library. So adding this library to this file alone will not load it in your site. So this is where the dynamic part comes in. And just so you guys know, in the Slick library there, this is a jQuery dependent library, and you do have to add those dependencies to the library as well, because also new in Drupal 8, jQuery will not load by default on every single page. So if you are adding code that requires jQuery, you do need to add that dependency, otherwise it won't work. And do not be tricked when you're developing with in the admin side, because it loads globally while you're in the admin side. So while you're developing, it looks fine. But as soon as an anonymous user hits your site, they're not gonna have that support, and they'll get some errors, which isn't nice. But how we make this load and everything work together, we're going to come back to. I just wanted to start with the introduction that you can have multiple theme libraries defined, but they will not load globally until it's included in your info file or elsewhere, which we'll come back to. So I will touch base on, this was quasi-possible in Drupal 7, but it did require a custom module. And it did require writing a hook that would, load JS on a certain page based on a display mode or something like that. So this is something that even as a front-end developer, I would implement on a D7 site. But I just want to stress the difference that a themer taking on a task like that 3 years into development, when much smarter back-end people have figured out the best way to do things, is a lot less impactful than taking on Drupal 8 2 months into development. At that stage, if I had to write a custom module and figure out how to write OOP and do all that sort of stuff, I probably wouldn't have got as far. So this is kind of where bringing the theme library functionality into the actual theme layer is super helpful for front-end developers that don't have that level of back-end experience. So that's kind of the quick intro to theme libraries. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Was that slick code on the previous slide? That just goes below your...
Yeah, so kind of picture that that's one file. Okay. I just couldn't get it up and down.
Where are you initializing that slick library, Daniel? It wasn't sitting in your info of the
oops. Where am I going? Here?
Yeah.
So picture it kind of like it's one continuous file. I've put it in 2 columns because just from a slide size perspective.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so kind of picture that's one file.
Can we also an option is like create a module? You create a module, like a kind of custom module.
Can you create a custom module?
And then do it.
So custom modules, I believe, and I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but I do believe custom modules do have library YAML files as well that call assets. So this pattern you'll probably see in module development as well. Yeah. So creating a slideshow. So I'm sure many people have done this many different ways in Drupal 7, as first it was Views slideshow, and then Views had several other plugins that came in, and based on what you were looking for, you chose one. But my current favorite, as I already said, is Slick. It's been humbly dubbed the last carousel you'll ever need, not by me, by the developer. So some of the things I personally love about this is it's fully responsive out of the box, and I'm talking like while you're dragging your browser around. I don't know if you guys have experienced, I think Views slideshow, while you do this, you kind of get these big white gaps underneath, and it's not very nice. So it's actually fully responsive, not only from a width perspective, but from an aspect ratio perspective as you're scrolling around, which is nice. You can define different settings by breakpoint right in your JavaScript definition, which we'll go over. Touch enabled, a center focus display, which I'll be showcasing here in the content of scans, and then all the default, what everybody else has basically. So autoplay, dots, arrows, all that level of configuration is available there as well. And this is kind of a quick little snippet of what it looks like, and I will scroll to my... So in this example, we have multiple slides showing per slide, which is kind of nice. So you can have, if you have a listing of 15 pictures and you want your carousel to show 4 at a time, this one's showing 4 at a time. And then as the responsive settings get, the screen gets smaller, we're reducing it to 3, to 2, to 1. And that can all be done right in this configuration. And I've done something similar with BX Slider, where I was constantly destroying and recreating the configuration based on browser size in JavaScript, and which just kind of gets really messy. So it's really, really nice that you can just do all this all in your nice in this format here. So the design for the slideshow, this is what we had, and this is the center focus display I was referencing. So there's actually we're only showing one slide at a time, but you get kind of that teaser at the front and the end that there's more. It's a really nice visual indicator, apart from arrows only, to let people know there's more before and after. And you can see when comparing to the mobile display, the size of that teaser on the front and the end is, from a percentage perspective, is greatly reduced, just because on a smaller screen showing that much of a teaser on either end, it didn't work. So first of all, needing the center focus and needing the ability to customize this based on browser size was what made Slick the best option. So diving into a little bit of code, I'll first focus on the HTML markup that we wanted Drupal to output. And the thing I want to reiterate here is how this markup gets output is it doesn't matter. In the context of this project, we used the paragraphs module, like I mentioned, but it could be output by views, it could be output by a multi-valued field. But when I kind of start something like this, laying out code for a component, I always kind of have to have a little dream sequence moment where I'd be like, oh, if I could control all the code, what would it look like perfectly? And then I dive into Drupal and hopefully make it output that way. So this is the code I wanted. I knew I wanted to come out of this. I wanted Drupal to output for this slideshow. And Twig makes this really nice. So in Drupal 8, so that's another big win for Drupal 8, is that getting full control over your output is a lot easier. So next, we're going to go back to the theme library part, kind of picking up where we left off. So the one difference as well between implementing it at the theme library level is you're also responsible for, going to the website or to GitHub, grabbing the assets, adding them to your library, where sometimes with a contrib module, either it would come all with it, or you would go, maybe sometimes you'd have to add it to the theme library or the libraries folder as well. So that's just it's kind of like one extra step that you got to make in making those definitions. So in our Slick library here, we have pulled in the Slick min.js, which is a minified version of what the Slick library provides you. Slick CSS, so it does come with some pretty simplified CSS that lets you, have dots and arrows, and you can customize that as well. But then what we do is we add in the Slick config.js, which is where all of our definitions are gonna lie. So the next step, and this code example does require scrolling, is defining those settings. So the syntax for this type of object is very well documented on the Slick website. So, they have all of your options available, how you can configure it. So here I scroll here, does it scroll here? Yeah. So here we've defined a special JS class. So I want you to keep that in mind because in our previous code example that wasn't there. So we will have to add that at some point. But here you'll see us defining the center focus display, what kind of buttons we want for the arrows, and then our responsive styles as well, which are customizing that center focus display to be smaller on the mobile version. When we implemented this, Slick didn't have mobile first options. They do now. So these code examples, it's kind of, from a theming perspective, I think we're at the point where we do mobile first. I always found it, when we were doing this one, you kind of have to switch the logic backwards. But just so you guys know, if you are to pick it up today, download a new library, there is a mobile first option. So yeah, so we've set different styles for our breakpoints here.
I'm assuming we can add as many breakpoint objects in there.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I tried to look into is I wanted like my Sass breakpoint to talk to my JavaScript. Never quite got there. And the fact that this one wasn't mobile first and my Sass breakpoints were mobile first, it didn't make sense at the time, but it would be nice to kind of find a way to get that into a variable as well. I don't know if anybody would know how to do that. I'd be interested in knowing. So now that we have our theme library, first of all, pulling in all of the essential assets for Slick. We have it pulling in our configuration. We have our markup rendering to the page, but nothing's happening at this point still. So our code at this point would still be rendering just a list of videos in this sense. So what lets us bring it all together is the Twig template, which is another lovely part of Drupal 8. So what we're looking at here is the Twig template that would probably be rendering the code we looked at in the first example. So I'm going to take you step by step through the way we would add stuff to make this possible. So the first step is the attach library, which is the mysterious magic that makes this all possible. So attach library and then defining that namespace that you've outlined in your theme YAML file is what tells Drupal, okay, we're not loading this Slick library on every page, but now we need this Twig template, and this Twig template is asking for that library. So that's kind of the mysterious magic that brings it all together. And then yeah, so, and then if this template is loaded anywhere, this happens. So the thing I like about this as an alternative to what was done in Drupal 7 is you don't really need to think about it in the sense of a page. You don't need to know on my blog / whatever page I need to load this JavaScript. It's all kind of linked to that template file, and as soon as that template file is needed, that library is loaded. And I guess an alternative question is it a big deal if this library just gets loaded everywhere? You know, can we just make it a global library? On a small site with low traffic, with one library, it's probably not a big deal. Bigger sites, you can have upwards of 6, 7, or who knows how many external JavaScript libraries doing some fancy stuff, and that's something you definitely don't want loading on every page. So the last step is adding that JavaScript class to our element. And this is, again, not a necessary step, but it's something we like to do in terms of best practices. It's just keeping your JavaScript, the classes your JavaScript are targeting, completely separate from your CSS. If we want to change this class to Slideshow slides something else, we can do that because we have different styles on this slideshow for whatever reason. But that JavaScript is, we know that class is touching JavaScript, and we don't want to be styling on it, and we don't want to be removing it. It makes it really obvious from a maintainability perspective. So that is scenario number 1 for Slideshow. Any questions there? Yes?
So just try to understand like what to do is like you create a node content type and using views, or you create a block like for this slideshow, or you create a like a basic page.
So I would say there's countless ways that this could be done. What did we do specifically?
Yeah.
So this is specifically using the paragraphs module. Now the paragraphs module has a field on it in this context, and that field accepts multiple Vimeo video links. So that is why this is a field template. So think of it like a multi-value field. And instead of having Drupal's default divs, we've actually put this into an unformatted list. But I think what creates that list, whether it's a list of a UL or it's just a nested array of divs, if it could be a view, it could be, I think that's the true flexibility of this, is that it could be a multi-value field, it could be a view, it could be anything. You could be putting code into a block, and it's probably not the best way, most Drupal-y way to do things. But basically, the theme library does not care what technology has put in this markup. Yes?
In the text library called, could you use a module library as well? Or is that limited to the theme library?
You know, I don't know. That would be it. Yeah. Yeah. It would make sense. Yeah. I think there was one other question. Good. So if you're still a little confused, that's okay. We're going to kind of, in the context of content tabs, we're going to kind of go through this again a little quicker, but just to show you how that one was done as well. So like I mentioned, in D7, we would see this a lot with the Quick Tabs module. And this is our design mockup for this one. So we have our tabs along the top. So you click on those and the display below would update via Ajax. So that's the biggest Ajax JavaScript hide show, however it's done, not a page refresh. So that's the key here. So for this type of functionality, what kind of JavaScript library did we use? Slick again. But isn't Slick for slideshows? Yes, it is. But Slick gives us so many configuration options. It was actually pretty easy to make it work here as well. And because we were already using it, it was a really easy build on the slideshow implementation. Because how different are they really? I mean, quick tabs kind of maybe fade in and out, or maybe they just chop in and out. They don't have to slide. And these are all configuration options that were available in Slick, along with the ability to customize your pager. So we're going to dive into that.
You can almost say it's pretty slick.
Sorry,
Yeah.
did you say QuickTabs doesn't have a Drupal 8 module, or you just thought?
When we implemented this, it did not.
Right.
But even if it did,
Better option.
I don't know how it would work in the context of paragraphs, because QuickTabs always work with blocks, right? Like you'd filter blocks into it. So, well, now I know paragraphs can pull in blocks as well. But yeah, it definitely wasn't ready when we did this. We started this early 2006. And I guess another big reason why we went slick, as well, is that when we got to mobile display, this was more of a traditional slideshow display. We totally could have squished those tabs into fitting, but you know, the client decides they want 2 more, and then we're kind of hooped. So we decided to really pare it down on mobile devices. So back to the markup. In my utopian markup kingdom, this is what I was looking for. Very, very similar to what we saw for Slideshow. But you will see that we are putting a lot more content within our tabs versus a simple iframe video. We're now loading in a title, we're loading in a body, we're loading in an image. So a little more content is getting loaded into the middle, but we actually treated that like a completely separate component. So this tab interface was built in a way that it did not care what was inside. This use case hasn't come up yet, but if they want tabs tomorrow that have very different content within those tabs, we can just completely reuse this code and just be loading in the different inner content, I guess is the best way to say it. And back to our theme library. So because they were so closely linked, I kept this in the same theme library. The only added chunk of code is the new set of configuration that we need for the sky, because it's very different layout. We don't have the center focus display anymore, and we need to do some customization to the pager as well. So I kind of simulated in this code that I've minimized the other code. So the thing we're doing here is we are defining custom paging, and what that custom paging variable option, I'm not sure what to call it, we get to attach a function to that, and that function is actually aware of what content is in each slide. And you'll see that we're looking for that article title, and we're pulling that, whatever the article title is, into the pager. So where the slideshow showed dots, that had 0 content in it, it was just kind of like an empty div. This custom paging function lets us actually search contextually in the slide and pull something into that pager. Now, this could also be used for a gallery that has thumbnails below. So using the same type of same function, you could instead look for the image file that's sitting there. And this is not something I figured out. I Googled it. Someone else figured it out. And that's something that's really cool, because even if this library was available through a Views plugin, would this level of customization be available? I'm guessing no. And if this level of customization was available in a Views plugin, what would that form look like? Is another thing. So kind of bringing all of that into this type of configuration versus a click configuration kind of gives us the power of the full library, where an implementation through a module, I don't think it possibly can. So the one thing that this does is the pager was still rendering to the bottom by default, just because that's where the source order, how Slick laid out its source order. But with a little CSS, it was really easy to move to the top. And the last slide again is us bringing it all together. So we've called that Slick library in there, and we've added our JS class. Now in the context of the scans website, the tabs and the slideshow are loaded on the exact same page, which you probably saw in that little video in the beginning. So, and this, technically we are calling this library twice on that single page, but because the theme library is nice and smart, it knows. It finds one, it loads it, it finds another, it doesn't load it again. But if I am to take this file and load it on a different page, it's gonna do, so it's really, really smart, which is nice. So we do have some references and links, like I mentioned. We did do a blog post series on the Acquia Developer Center blog. Center spelt the American way, not the Canadian way. So if you go to this page, which I'm going to publish in 2 minutes on the Jibe, you're going to get links to the Acquia blogs. I'll put up the screencast from today, and I'll also post the slides as well, so everybody can revisit. And then once you have the slides, you don't want to be copying these links right now because they're not pretty. Once you have the slides, I have put some references there. One is a link to Basic, the theme that I'm a co-maintainer for on Drupal.org. The Slick library link, where you're going to see more configuration options than I could possibly cover today. I've also added some assets if you're interested in learning more about theme libraries, 2 of which are referencing some Drupal.org documentation, the other 2 referencing articles I've written on the Jibe's blog, basically introducing people to this concept. So they're definitely kind of 101 style posts. So if you want to get up to speed, they're really good assets. So, if there's any other questions? Yes.
Can you go back 2 slides to your configuration for the tabs?
Yeah.
There. Can you scroll down? Do you have more code there or not?
Yes.
Okay. So you told us that it was like AX loaded, but there, since it's not mobile first, I see that the custom paging is already reading the HTML from the page. So AX is not going to work there, right? Are you just using AX for the mobile option and not for the desktop?
Because of the custom paging, sorry?
So the custom paging is reading the title from the slide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It means that the content is already there.
Yeah.
It's loaded.
Yeah.
So where's your AX working there?
Okay, sorry. When I said Ajax, I was insinuating that the hiding and showing of tabs was happening without a page refresh.
Okay.
So not actually, there's no Ajax calls there. I mean, you totally could. You can put stuff in, and like for instance, another example is with the slideshow display. that we introduced first. We also have there's a callback for after slide has changed, basically. So for the video one, what we do is after the slides changes, we autoplay the video. So it's another kind of JavaScript trigger we have on change.
And another question they had is like, when we saw your idea in it's like one slide before this one.
Yeah.
So you have the wrapper of the tabs and everything, but then when you are building your Twig template, it's like, I mean, way more simple. Like, I'm assuming that you are building your article template for another field, something.
Yeah. So I really wanted to have that componentized separately. Like I said, so if tomorrow they want to put a video in this, like a video only in this tab, it's super easy. Yeah. So the Twig template is handling basically the UL, the LI repeat, and then I have another template that's rendering what's inside it.
Because I know that with the paragraph, you are probably going to have troubles if you are trying to get the data from a rich edit or text, because it's going to give you a paragraph whether you like it or not.
Yeah, so for the tab specifically, we had a paragraph type called tabs, and that paragraph type referenced another paragraph called tab, and that so what was in the middle was handled through the tab paragraph type, and the actual slideshow functionality was through the tabs paragraph type.
Where the user input let's say you have robotic and UAVs, and then you have your article body. So where the actual user input the text there,
yeah.
It's just
well, we had multiple fields, so we had an image upload field, we had a body, we had a title.
And your body is a CK editor?
Yeah.
Okay, and can you grab the value from the CK editor without the extra paragraph that the CK editor gives you?
So you get
because you are going to get a paragraph inside a paragraph with that using a Twig template.
So another layer of paragraph reference is what you're saying?
No.
Sorry.
So I think like it's talking about how depending on your text filter format, that it might add like in your HTML
Extra
coming out
markup.
of
Extra mark. So if your body had extra markup.
It usually comes down the pipe with another P already attached to it, and so you get a paragraph and another paragraph. How do you like?
I'm trying to find out if you are able to do it. I know I'm not able to do it.
Yeah.
Like if I'm using a body, let's call it container.
Yeah.
I know I have to put a big tag because if I use a paragraph, I'm going to get. So I was wondering if you are able to do it. I know like right now I can't.
Okay. I may have been, this code's probably simplified for the context of the slide, but I actually I have my templates here, so we can maybe take a poke after and I can let you know. But I think I totally have seen that before, like that wrapper div at the utmost level is actually quite difficult to customize.
There are Twig filter functions that you can wrap in, so if you wanted to create a separate input filter specifically for Twig, you'd be able to have a function call within your Twig template that could strip out specific tags that are within your input. So if you are parsing through widget input, and say you want to strip out all the A tags or paragraph tags, then you still have that option to do that.
Okay.
But there is no native out of the box like script tag. You have to parse that through other people.
You could maybe create a specific text format for that specific field.
Yeah.
Not allowed. To generate the markup you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Does this flip have a lot of like transition effect? What is the effect that you use?
Yeah, so you can use fade, you can use slide right, left.
Is there other thing else? Transition effect? Or is it limited?
You know, there might be, but I can't say for sure. If you Google it or you go to the link in the slides, the first page you see is super helpful, and there's tons of examples as well.
Because I heard that like, there's some issues with some transition effect, and then for some impressions like it's a little transition effect. People,
Oh, so like fancier stuff like
yeah,
scattering around. Yeah, I don't know if it does a lot of that, but that demo page is probably the best place to find out what's possible. Yeah. Anything else? Well, thanks for coming out, everyone.
Yeah, we need
You know about open social? Yep. We need this one. Yeah. It's just for creating communities. Really.
Yeah.